Okay. All right. Okay. So this evening we have a last minute change. We have Noriko Muramatsu, and she will be talking about the relationship between ER and TOEIC score gains. So thank you very much, Noriko. And I guess over to you.
Okay. So today I am going to talk about the TOEIC gains among Japanese high school students in Tokyo. This is where I teach. And this presentation is a revised version of a presentation that I made at Temple University Graduate School. And so it's a year old, but I'd like to explain my action research that I did in class. Oops, my slide does not move. Why? There we go. Okay, so I will talk briefly about the definition of ER and the recommended materials, previous studies on the relationship of ER and TOEIC scores, and then my action research itself, discussion, conclusion, and some thoughts on future research. So first, the definition of ER and recommended materials. So these are I chose 5 of these researchers and practitioners who wrote, the studies that I chose. And as you can see here, the definitions among people are a bit different. And I want to talk about Palmer a little bit. Does everyone know Palmer? He is the first person to use the term extensive reading. And he worked with the education ministry in Japan. And he was the first to build the English education system in Japan. And he suggested doing both intensive reading and extensive reading in the classroom. And for some reason, extensive reading was kind of left behind for a very long time. And then the very famous Krashen, he defines extensive reading as free voluntary reading. And he says you do reading because you want to read. And then we have Day and Bamford, who suggested the 10 principles, and they are the classical extensive reading researchers. And we also have Nation, and he suggests that learners should do large quantities of reading and making sure that the learning from reading is supported by other kinds of learning. And we also have Jacobs and Farrell, who defines ER as reading regularly and in quantity. And I looked at the materials that these studies suggested. Palmer only just said using ordinary real world materials, reading for the purpose of pleasure and also for information. Krashen just says that children can borrow books from the library, and he doesn't really mention what kind of books should be read. Day and Bamford, they defined quite clearly that the materials should be well within the linguistic competence in terms of vocabulary and grammar. And they recommend language learner literature, which is the graded readers known today. And Nation just, he repeats that materials should be simplified text. And Jacobs and Farrell uses the word the right level for the students, which means the materials should be like matching each individual student's reading level, and it involves not only grammar and vocabulary but something else. So my research question was, is there a correlation between the amount of reading and TOEIC score? And what should students read to increase TOEIC scores? So I looked at some previous studies on the relationship of ER and TOEIC scores. And here are some of the, studies that I looked at. The left-hand side of the chart shows the studies that said there is a significant correlation, and the right-hand side, they say there wasn't a significant relation. And for the significant one, I would like to talk a little bit about Nishizawa and al. He is famous for doing a longitudinal study with ER. His students are not a large number, but they do it for more than 4 years. And he concluded that when students engage in extensive reading longer, they have better results than reading for a shorter period of time. And he even said that even if the students read the same amount, students who read for a longer period scores higher, is what Nishizawa mentioned in his study. And for the non-significant people, these studies all showed a little bit of gain in TOEIC scores, but they concluded that it's not significant enough. And some of the studies just compare the total score of the TOEIC, which is reading and listening score altogether. And some of the studies only focus on the reading section scores. So it's not really like a equivalent result, but these were the studies that I could find. Okay, and I would like to explain a little bit about my study itself, which was an action research in the classroom. So first of all, the participants were 285 Japanese students in Senior 3, which is grade 12 in Japan. And in each class, 1 or 2 students have lived abroad for a very short time in elementary school, but there were not anyone who recently came back. So they all studied basically like English in the classroom from junior 1, which is grade 7. The standard instruction in our school for extensive reading is that all high school students should read 1,000 words per day for 5 days a week, which is 5,000 words a week. And we make it 5,000 because students are usually quite busy and they can do some catching up on the weekends if it's only 5,000 words. And students can choose whatever book they want from the library because we have like 7,000 English books in the library. But of course, we show some recommended book level to them. And how they find out the level is that we indicate the level. The English department divides the books into 5 levels according to headwords and some recommendation from the publishers. And the books are shown like this. So you can see that there's a color sticker on each of the book with levels and the total amount of words per book. The amount of words are sometimes very specific, sometimes they're kind of vague, but it just kind of shows how long a book is. And the level is divided into 5, and it doesn't really follow all the publishers' levels, but we kind of adjust it for our students. So when I looked at the words read, the total words read, and the TOEIC scores, you can see that at the bottom of the list is shown the total amount of words that the students read, and you can see that in colors that I'm sorry, what am I saying? Okay, the scores are indicated on the right-hand side. So if they read under 10,000 words, you can see that it was like most of the students score under 450, but if they read over 10,000 words, the what do you say, the scores kind of like gradually go up. You can see that the largest percentage of the students go up as they read more, like this. So if they read more than 200,000 words, 44.4% of the students will score higher than 550 points. But I focused on this part, on this pink circle part, where 10% of the students, although they read more than 200,000 words, their scores are very low. It's lower than 450, and I focused on these kind of students. So I looked closely at the 280 students in senior 3. I looked at the score changes from February to June, which is like 5 months apart, and the chart shows the results of the scores, like how the scores changed between the 5 months. And okay, let me go on. And so because I focused on the lower score students, I revised the instructions. So the amount of reading was the same. It's reading 1,000 words per day for 5 days a week. But I instructed the students to read easier books, especially with the low scoring students. So they should read short level 1 books under 1,000 words. And they should read mainly like level 0 books, which are like graded readers and ORTs. Some I can read books. And they were not recommended, like they were not allowed actually to read the children's picture books, such as Leonie's books or what other famous picture books. Like I'm like Curious George, they were not allowed to read those kind of books. So after giving these instructions, some students followed my instructions, some students did not, but I chose those students who followed my instruction. And so these names are pseudonyms, but I looked at their score changes in 5 months. So for example, if you look at Joe, his score was 240 in February, but it gained to 530 in June, which is quite a large gain. And so I looked closely at what kind of books they were reading. So in February, when Joe scored 240, he was reading mainly level 1 and level 2 books. So you can see that he was reading 70% of books from level 1, which are like graded reader, Oxford level 2. And he was reading these books because it was recommended for for high school students to read. But because I instructed these students to read a lower level, he changed his reading choice to mainly level 0. And you can see that the 70% of books were chosen from level 0. And he started reading a little more books, and also but the word count was not like, it wasn't so significant, but you can see that his scores really increased, like 290 points just in 6 months. And the only thing that he changed during this 6 months was reading easier books. If you look at Kim, you can see like he he already scored 475 in February, which was like higher than 450, but he also changed his book choice from mainly level 1 and 2 to mainly level 0 and 1. And then you can see that his score gained up to 600 points. So it goes the same with all the other students. So they changed their choice of books to an easier level books. And then these students were able to increase their TOEIC scores dramatically. So going on to discussion, we can say that reading a large amount of their liking does not always increase the TOEIC scores. So it kind of goes against what Krashen would say, like reading anything they want to read. Reading at the appropriate level, students reading books lower than their current English level is essential to increase their TOEIC scores. And the reading score gains alone was not significant, was not a significant score. So the score in total grew. So if you look at the chart, you can see that the gains were larger in listening than in reading itself. So Begler and Hunt proposed that reading lower level simplified text is effective for developing reading rates of Japanese learners. And they also concluded that fluency increases comprehension, which means reading easier, like books, are more effective especially for lower level students. And so my conclusion was basically the more reading, the more gains in score. Students need attention on level of their materials. Reading easier books improves the TOEIC scores for lower level students. And the same applies for lower intermediate level students. And my future research is what and how much should intermediate level students read in order to reach the advanced level? And also, why does the listening score improve greater than the reading score on the TOEIC test through ER? Because in our school, students don't read while listening. They solely just read and they have no audio with it. So this was my puzzle, and I think I should look into this in the future. So probably about 20 minutes, and I would like to have questions and comments. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. That's very, very interesting. Now, hang on a sec. I'll just see if I can. There we go. Thank you so much for that. Now, it's been a couple of years since you've done the research. Have you had a chance to think about doing the future research topics?
Yeah, I'd like to, but I was thinking like I would like to do the study if I'm teaching senior threes again. But unfortunately, this year I'm teaching senior ones, so it's a different level, and you can't compare it because the senior ones just started their extensive reading, like for a whole year. Yeah.
Do the students do extensive reading in junior high school, or is this something that actually begins at senior high school?
It does start in junior high school, but in junior high school, it's mainly like reading together or listening to the teacher reading aloud or doing some activities around some books like ORT or some of the picture books. So it's not really the extensive reading. So the extensive reading starts from senior one, and like 98% of reading is solely done outside of the classroom. It's not, we don't use class time to do the extensive reading. Only at the very beginning where we do some guidance, like in April. And other than that, they do it outside of class.
So when they start in first year senior high school, what kind of instruction or limits or guidance are they given that might be different from what you have outlined for the senior 3 class?
So it's the basic instruction that I showed in my slide. It's only like reading 1,000 books a day for 5 days, and they can choose any book of their liking. Of course, we show recommended levels, and we also strongly promote the students to start with graded readers. But sometimes, like, some students don't really like graded readers, and they kind of like to stick to books like Magic Tree House or the Fairy Rainbow series. And
Rainbow
the reason,
Magic, yeah.
Rainbow Magic series, because the main reason is because they've read it in Japanese when they were in elementary school. So they kind of know the story. Or some of the students like to read Mr. and Miss Little Miss because they know the characters. And of course, a lot of the students try to read Curious George. But after one book, they find out that the English is quite difficult for picture books. And so they kind of give up.
Do you have any readers who are reading quite high level? Are there, because you say that you've only got a few students who are perhaps who have had overseas experience, but generally not recently. Do you have like high level readers as well, or is it quite the range is not so great?
It's the latter. Some of the students are really like high level readers. Like this year we have a half like her dad's English, so naturally she would read higher level books, but I think she doesn't count. So so basically the students just like are in the same range. So they start kind of at the same level. We do sometimes get like star students who gradually raise their level of reading, and they are by the end of senior 3, they would start reading just really real novels on their own. And that's quite impressive, but not very much.
That's really interesting. So with the TOEIC scores, are there, it seems like most people actually do make gains, is what you're saying. There's very few who wouldn't. I think there's always kids who won't do anything, even if you ask them very nicely. So uh, have you changed anything since you did your research? Have you changed the way that you do anything based on the results of what you found?
I do share what I found um, with with my colleagues. So I try to I asked the teachers to recommend more graded books to students than reading chapter books. But not really, not really like something else.
So things are working, so you haven't altered anything significantly since the
Right.
research.
But in our school, because the students like are close to each other, because we're a private school and we don't have students coming in after like junior 1 and senior 1, the word of what do you say? Word of
Word of mouth?
mouth among the students work more than recommendations from teachers. So when there's a star student and he or she recommends some series, then that becomes quite popular.
Yeah, that's very, very interesting. Do you have teachers modeling the reading? Like, do the teachers, uh, you know, read some of the books and talk about it with students, or is it purely
We
student?
do strongly recommend the new teachers to do a lot of reading of course, because then you can't recommend books to the students. But because like reading is solely outside of the classroom, there's not very much like recommendation or book talks in the classroom. I think it will change a little bit because from this April, we're going to have X reading for all the high school students because promoting graded readers, we kind of lack enough books. Like there are 800 students in high school, but we don't have that much graded readers.
Well, another question I was going to ask, of course, is how you record the reading. Obviously, with X reading coming in, it makes it a lot easier. But before that, do the students fill out a reading log, or do you
Yeah.
check books in, out? How does that work with recording the
reading? Right. And so it's both. All students have a book log that they write their comments, the information of the book and their comments, and the teachers would check it I don't know, from time to time. Basically, we check it once a month. But it is a lot of work for one teacher to check 285 books. And of course, some students cheat. So we also have the library help us with that. So when we kind of go to the library and say, well, this student does not really do well in English, but he says he read so and so. And then the librarian would just tell us whether it's true or not, whether the student really did come to the library or not.
So some students do read in the library, is what you're saying, or?
Yeah, that happens too. But basically, they wouldn't finish reading in the library after school. So they would have to borrow it. So the librarian checks if the student has borrowed English books or not. They wouldn't tell us which title was borrowed because that's kind of confidential. But they only tell us, but they would share us the information whether they borrowed or not.
Well, that sounds fair. Paul, you had a question there?
Over in the chat.
Yes, thanks, Sandra. Thank you, Noriko. That was very interesting. Excuse me. We've also been looking at TOEIC score gains and its correlation with extensive reading. We didn't find much correlation at all until our learners had read over about 400,000 words. But yeah, but my main question was, do you give, what kind of guidance do you give your learners about choosing levels of the extent of the readers that they're reading, and particularly when you sort of re-guided them to be reading at lower levels, what sort of did you tell them to be doing, or how to choose their levels?
Because the levels are indicated on the books with stickers, so it's easy just to tell them read level 0 or read level 1. So that's the very basic instruction. But among those books, well, the librarian helps us a lot. She knows a lot about the extensive reading books. She herself, like she wasn't an English teacher, but she herself does read the books too, so that she can recommend it to the students who are wandering in the library. In class, we would just say, like, if you choose a book and you open it, and if you find words like 3 or 4 words that you don't understand, then try to choose a book much easier than that, than the one that you're holding.
You mean like 3 or 4 words out of 100 words, right? Yeah, okay, I see. So yeah, that's interesting. And you're also using reading material that's not sort of graded reader material, that's children's material as well. Okay, that's interesting. But they're grade 12, so that means what, 17, 18, is that right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay,
yeah.
Okay, interesting, thank you.
All right, Chris, would you like to ask or make a comment? You've just typed a comment there.
Yeah, I can see there is a problem for a student who reckons they're intermediate. If you say, read a pre-intermediate book, they're going to kick back at that because that's not my level. But of course, for the weaker students, that is their level. And what they really need to do is exactly what you said, Noriko, which is read an easier book, and that will get them to benefit more.
Yeah, that's exactly it. We also tell them that if it's a book that's much easier than their current level, that they can finish reading faster and they can finish reading more. Because they have to reach like 5,000 words a week. We would say, well, if you choose an easy book, you can finish faster, and you can also read more than you think. So that kind of also like what motivates them to choose easier books.
I think the grading is a big issue. I think a lot of people struggle with how to level things because there's no complete standard. You know, I mean, of course, we have the CEFA scale, but I don't know that many people in Japan perhaps who would be using that as a guidance, or maybe a bit, but yeah, everyone sort of has their own system of doing things. So who came up with yours and what was it based on?
Excuse me. First, we divided the books into seven levels, and that was following the Oxford reading bookworm levels. But then after we started extensive reading, we found that having seven levels doesn't have any meaning. Like it doesn't really help the students to choose the books. And so we made it into 5, which makes one level kind of broader. But within the broad like range, they can choose books that kind of fits their favorites, like genre-wise, or sometimes pictures, and sometimes the printed, like the size of the font. It also affects the student's choice.
I
So,
agree. I think that's a really big part of it. Even for myself, there's sometimes I pick up a book and if the font's too small, and not just because I'm wearing glasses for reading, but just in general, it just puts me off. So I think that's, yeah, definitely has a huge impact on readers choosing books. So it was basically Oxford Bookworms as a basis, but then kind of modified, is what you're saying.
Yeah. And then we kind of so the 5 levels kind of match the Aiken levels grammar wise, but only for grammar wise. So, but there are other factors that we must think of, like vocabulary levels or the length of a sentence, and also sometimes content. For example, like some books would say like physics for babies, but that's not a level 0 book.
No. Yeah.
Can I, sorry.
Yeah, no, go for
Can
it.
I just jump in there again with another question? Noriko, so I think you said on your slide that there were about 240 students in your group?
285 per
85,
grade.
okay. Per grade. So how long have you been doing this ER program with?
Oh, in our school, we started like in 2009.
Okay. So you've been involved a lot of high school learners doing extensive reading, right? What kind of interesting feedback have you received from the students about extensive reading and things that they liked or enjoyed, or things that students were surprised about? Or I don't know, I guess you being involved with the program for so long, you've got quite a bit of learner feedback, I should say.
Yeah, but we finally got results after doing it for 10 years. Before that, it was only like the results were shown in like specific like group of students. Like it's not always the high level students, it's those like reading students, those students who like reading. The thing that really motivates the students is when their senpai have good results in the entrance exams. For example, like our students are quite busy with half study and then half club activities. So their life is half and half of sports and studying. And none of, like hardly any of our students go to Juku. And because they can be recommended to Meiji University. So they are busy with clubs and study. But like a certain number of students take the entrance exams for national schools and also Seoul, Waseda, Keio, and Jochi, and Rika Daigaku, Tokyo Rika Daigaku and stuff. And basically the students who pass the exams are students who worked hard on ER. This is really true. And that's probably the most significant difference among them because all of them must study a certain amount. Their scores must reach the criteria for recommendation. So everyone even the lower students do study a lot. But so the significant difference is that when a student works hard on extensive reading, they get really good results for the entrance exams. And that really motivates the juniors.
That's really interesting. Did you notice any difference with learner motivation towards doing ER at home compared to doing other types of sort of homework? For example, English drills or from an exercise book or something. Were they more motivated to do the extensive reading, or it wasn't much?
In our school, the English department has like a minimal basic that all the teachers follow, no matter what their teaching style is. So the extracurricular what do you say, curriculum for English would just be studying for like TOEIC or doing extensive reading or doing both. We don't really have other activities in English going on because they're busy enough.
Sure. Yeah, of course. Thank you.
Yep.
Now, Barry, would you like to, are you able to give your comment and share with the class?
Well, sure. So, yeah, previously I was working at Guma University, and we used a similar way to categorize the level of books. I think we based it off the extensive reading foundation, the number of headwords, and we put them into 5 levels. But I've found that the YL Yomiyasusa level is much more effective in once the students get their heads around it, then it's really, you can give them very good guidance. That was one comment, and then the other one was about the listening scores going up, and we were doing extensive reading with science and engineering students for 2 years, and they were taking the TOEIC, and we had the same results, like their listening scores were going up, but their reading scores were not going up very much. Well, they were going up a little bit, but the listening scores were where they showed a lot of improvement. And I don't know, I don't have any evidence. I can't explain that, but I suppose it's because the listening is, it's one question at a time, and then their exposure to the language through ER has kind of increased their processing speed. And so they're able to deal with the questions on the listening section. But when they get into the reading section, especially towards the end, it's just like C, 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 C. They just fill in, all the, they couldn't, even the really advanced students had difficulty completing, 100 questions on the reading section. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is true. The TOEIC test itself is quite long, and it's quite tough, to concentrate for such a long time.
It's like a physical endurance test.
It is.
Woo! We're having a thunderstorm here.
Yeah, the listening thing I think is really, really interesting. I think it would be really, I'd love to see if anyone does any research on that, because that's certainly not what you would expect. You would expect that the reading would get easier rather than listening. But processing, fluency, I guess that's part of every aspect of the learning the language, isn't it?
I remember Takase Atsuko was also making the same comment, that her students also increased their reading level much faster than their reading level through extensive reading. So the teachers all experience this, but we don't know why.
Now, Chris, you talked about you've got a comment here about the Edinburgh Extensive Reading Scale. Now, I'm not familiar with that at all. Would you like to make a comment about that?
I'd already started lending books to students when I discovered the Edinburgh Extensive Reading Programme, which had a way of classifying the books across all the publishers into these, I don't think it was 9 levels or something. They started with G. I think actually there was technically an H as well, but we never used those. They were little pamphlets or something. And so that's the scale I used all the time I was teaching.
So G is the
originally
bottom. G is the bottom and it goes up.
A is the highest, but then they discovered that there were actually readers level X, like the Longman Bridge series. So they had to add in a strange letter that wasn't in order. And then I added in O for original versions. So that was my range. And I reckon students in a year could go through 3, 4, 5 different levels. And students over a period of 2 years could get up to reading original versions of well-selected books. But that would only be students who were with me for 2 years, as nobody else where I worked was doing any extensive reading. So if I had a student for 2 years running, you saw they might read 600,000 words, and they might read a few original versions at the end of their time.
There aren't very many studies with high school students, and the results would change with university students and high school students, is because high school students have a very limited amount of vocabulary, and that's probably what they work on a lot during their high school, like 3 years in high school, because learning the vocabulary finishes in junior high school for the Japanese English curriculum, but they need to increase the vocabulary a lot more, and they also need to be exposed to English a lot more, because most of the Most of the classes, like English classes, are conducted in Japanese in Japan. Probably during the 50 minutes, more than 30 minutes of Japanese is what they hear, and only 20 minutes of English, either with the audio of the textbook or some English that the teachers speak, and that's all they are exposed to. So so one thing that the Japanese Ministry of Education should add to the curriculum is extensive reading, so that, you know, it won't really pressure the English teachers in Japan, especially those teaching in the public schools, because I heard that teachers in public schools have so much other work other than teaching. So like for the experienced teachers already teaching, adding something like add speaking more in the classroom, or add what do you say, writing in the classroom would be too much work, and probably the present teachers would not be able to earn time to study to teach them. Yeah, so I always think that one thing that should be added in the curriculum is extensive reading.
Here, here.
Yeah.
Just out of curiosity, these students, probably the majority do go on to Meiji University.
Mm.
Do they have an extensive reading program at the university? Do they continue reading?
I heard that some of the professors or some of the teachers do extensive reading, but most of them don't. And the students tell me that, the graduates tell me that there are more English books in the high school library than in the university library. And
Yeah.
also, sorry, and also in the university library, they only have graded readers. Whereas in the high school library, we try to mix leveled readers, like young adult books and chapter books as well, so that they're exposed to different kinds of vocabulary through reading.
Yeah, I think that's really important, actually. Graded readers are definitely like the backbone of any system, but having variety is a big part of extensive reading. And when you add in the leveled readers, you do get that variety that you wouldn't necessarily get if you just stuck to the graded readers. So you have things like I Can Read series, or yeah, I'm trying to think of the other ones. Ready to Read.
Yeah.
Step into reading.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have great range of things, and they're still coming out with new things. So especially younger students, whether it's Minecraft or Jurassic Park or Pokemon, you'll find things there that you wouldn't find in graded readers, unfortunately.
Right. Yeah, so so Paul, your leveled readers are books written for native children who started reading on their own.
Yeah, thanks, Noriko. Chris just kindly replied to that as well.
Yeah.
I thought that might be the case after us posting that. Yeah. Okay. So I get it. There are for English first language younger learners.
Yeah.
Is that? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
So I read them at high school, I think, or maybe junior. I forgot. Okay. Thank you.
I remember one student liked the word wiggle. So he learned it from ORT, Oxford Reading Tree, like I think wiggle the toes or something.
Yeah.
And that word would never, ever appear in a textbook or in graded readers. So he kind of liked the sound wiggle and he learned it. So it was kind of interesting to hear that.
That's a really interesting point, actually, that a lot of extensive reading programs do have the Oxford Reading Tree titles, which of course they're not graded readers, they are leveled readers. And so personally, I don't use the stage 1 and 2 as much, because I find the language just not appropriate for people who have a very limited vocabulary. and then beyond 3 and 4, it's sort of okay. But that's the kind of language that you would never get if you just had the graded readers. So there is definitely a benefit for that as well.
Yeah, it is.
Noriko, you said that you're going to be moving on to X reading
Yes.
from this year.
Yeah.
Are you going to combine that with your print copy library, or just exclusively use X reading?
No, no. Our librarian has a doctorate from one of the Japanese universities, and her study was focusing on extensive reading in the school library. And she strongly recommended that students should read both leveled readers and graded readers in order to increase their vocabulary and to learn the kind of the flow of reading. So we English teachers too like the leveled readers because they're more cute. They have cuter pictures. The sentences have more rhythm than the graded readers. So yeah, we're going to use both of it.
So basically, X reading doesn't have leveled readers, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Or
So
chapter books.
Right. Yeah.
how do you gauge words read from your learners now? Do you use mReader or something, or how do you?
It's
No,
not
we
readers, just
only
quizzes.
You just
Yeah.
rely on the learners'
yeah.
sort of
So-
honesty.
We know like certain amount of students are always lying, but we
Okay, yeah.
kind of tell them that teachers can find out because we have like magic. Teachers have their own way of finding out. And we can also find out from their TOEIC scores too. And in our school, all senior 2s and senior 3s must take the TOEIC test once every term, because that's what Meiji University requires. So we kind of find out if they're really working on it or not. Because other than the amount of words read through extensive reading, they're exposed to the same textbook. They have the same time of English lessons. We know that most of the students don't go to prep schools or eikaiwa. We all know that the students are extremely busy with club activities. So the significant difference among students would be extensive reading. So we kind of tell them that's how we find out.
So the kids don't do any quizzes. So obviously not mReader, but when you start with X reading, there are quizzes involved. Are they going to start doing quizzes now?
We haven't decided because none of the teachers have used X reading yet. So we haven't decided anything at all, actually.
It's going to be very interesting, actually, because I mean, I'm very against quizzes for reading. And I know a lot of universities do use them purely because they need to have some sort of grading or some sort of accountability to the university. But with going from no quizzes to actually having quizzes, that might be an interesting thing to actually look at, to keep an eye on, if you choose to do quizzes.
Yeah, but we haven't discussed if the students will use those quizzes or not. And I'm not sure if the teachers want to use the quizzes because we didn't have any quizzes up to now.
Yeah, Barry, what were you saying there about the reading faster component?
Yeah, I know Sonia
Yeah.
Lele, yeah.
Yeah, like Paul Nation has the reading faster for reading. I forget the title of the series.
Reading for fluency or something, right?
Right,
for
right.
fluency.
Reading for speed and fluency.
Yeah.
And so we were having the students do extensive reading, and then they were doing reading strategies, listening strategies, and also we were doing speed reading exercises with them. And I think if they can see their, you know, levels, their speed increasing, that can be very motivating. It can be demotivating if they don't, but
Right.
generally speaking, everyone increases because it's, you know, it's training your eye coordination, right? And it's a skill that they can get, you know, pretty big benefits relatively easily. So that's I did that last semester, and students seem to enjoy that. And all of our materials are free. They're copyright free. You can download the courses. They're like at 500 word level, 1,000 word level, 2,000 word level, 3,000 word level, 4,500 word level. So I mean, if they're motivated students, you know, then they can really do all of those. And so that they're all PDFs that um,
Yeah,
are
I've looked at it once, but I haven't used it yet. So yeah, I'll look into that.
Yeah, I've just put a link, hopefully it's the right link, to the Victoria University Wellington site that has those.
It just went to me, Sandra.
Oh, okay. Oh, it did too.
And Noriko,
Thank you.
if you start using X reading and the quizzes, you're going to have to start dealing with cheating. I mean, it's just it comes with the territory, because then you're playing cat and mouse with the students.
Yeah.
And they are going to I've been involved with MReader for many years and made many quizzes for, well, more than 1,000 books. But it's just you know, it's cat and mouse. You have to play the sheriff, and it's not a good pedagogical position to be in. And I don't use quizzes now, and I just feel like, you know, hey, if the students, you know, you can take them there, but if they refuse and they don't, and they decide they're going to cheat, that's on them, you know. They're going to lose from that. And so yeah, it is part of the grade though. So but I just, honesty is the best policy is my approach. And I check weekly, not monthly.
Yeah, I know.
If you treat them like a criminal, they tend to act like a criminal, I feel. I think Chris is nodding as well. He's put a couple of comments definitely against the quizzes now. So
yeah, I agree, you know. Honesty. Well, we did rely on honesty up to now, so we don't really have to change to quizzes. We can also see their progress on X rating, which will make it easier for us to do some more checking. So we're going to be in a next phase to find out how the hybrid of X reading and the physical books are going to work. So maybe
Oh, sorry.
Oh,
Are you still planning to use the same reading log system, even if they're doing X reading online? Where they
we figured
like
out
wrote about their ideas and such, or
I remember listening to Mary O'Sullivan's presentation at JERA, and she explained that she's using X reading, but she uses a sticker thing system where she gives stickers to every, I don't know, every like 10 books or every 10,000 words or something. And she says it works to motivate them. So So among our English department, we decided to make a hybrid book log where where the students can either they can also write in their extra reading results along with the physical book results. For X reading, it won't be an obligation because we can check digitally too. But I thought if they could record their reading online, they can keep that book log, that physical book log for 3 years, which should be a reward to them.
Nice. Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Nice.
And
Yeah,
Chris,
they do like stickers.
Yes,
Students do
I
like
was just
stickers.
looking at that.
Really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Chris also asked, did you consider Oxford Reading Club?
No, we didn't. Because Oxford, with certain publishers, they only have their own books. So we discussed either using X Reading or not. So we didn't have any other options because the other publishers don't have other books from other publishers. It's only X Reading who has a different kind of materials. Although Penguin and Oxford left, they still have Macmillan and something else, like a lot. So yeah.
And I imagine you've probably got the Oxford books, physical books in the library. So
yeah. But for our library, we don't have a lot of the same titles. So we have 7,000 books, but we have 5,000 different titles. So naturally, for the first term and the summer vacation, we run out of graded readers. We don't have enough. And that's the main reason we're going to use X Reading. It's basically for the first term and the summer vacation.
And what is it? I'm just looking at that. The price per student per year for X Reading. Is that? Oh, I was going to say 200 sounds very good. 2,000 yen.
Sorry, typo.
Oh, on sale. I don't think Paul will be very happy with it.
2,000 per 12 months for an institutional account for a student. Yeah, so it's quite reasonable. I think if you consider it with what's the Oxford one? I think it's quite a bit more. Yeah,
around 10,000 yen a year.
That's a lot when you're with all your students. Yeah.
Possibly they might have institutional deals. I'm not sure, but certainly nothing like that. Was it 26 euros? That's how much it costs in Spain for the Oxford. Okay.
Quite expensive, and you only get to read Oxford books.
Which are good, but
yes, they are good, yes.
But variety is also very, very good.
Yeah.
As you said, Noriko, we're using X Reading for a lot of our courses at the moment, and it's nice to have the freedom to be able to assign books sometimes. Having groups of students or all students reading the same books. So they, for example, they want to discuss in the next class or something like that. So it's lots of different things you can sort of do there with an online platform.
Yes.
But I think some of my learners do miss the paper books as well. So
right.
Advantages to both systems.
That's true. Yeah, I think so. It really will be a second stage for our school to do all these hybrid stuff and try to find out other instructions or activities that we can do in class. Because we basically have never had students read the same extensive reading books because we don't have enough.
So like a book club, that kind of thing. You could do like a monthly book club, have everybody read the same book and talk about it.
We've never experienced that, so that would be something to look into.
Definitely keeping good reading logs, I think would be good if you're doing the hybrid. Just relying on the X Reading will only cover part. Hopefully they'll still be using the paper books.
Mm.
So having a log for the students. Also, at the end of the year, it's really nice to look back and see everything that you have read, especially if it's a written log. You know, you can go like, oh, yes, that's really good. I know I've started trying to do that for myself this year. That was my New Year resolution. So I've got this is my it's just like a campus notebook, and whenever I read a book, I illegally take a picture of the cover and make a little sticker of it, and then just write a few notes in here, and that way I can actually show the students. And I'm reading, you know, the books that they're reading too. Rising Star, there we go, very nice. That was one of my latest ones. Thank you, Paul. So I can show them that I'm reading the books too, and it's nice having a log. It doesn't have to be, you know, extensive like mine, but yeah.
The other magic that I use is I put color stickers on their log itself on the cover. So if they pass like no Aiken Jinrikyu, they would get a pink sticker, or if they get score like, I don't know, 450 on TOEIC, they would get a blue sticker or something. And it kind of motivates them. And the students tease each other, and that was kind of interesting to watch. For the TOEIC, it's quite difficult for high school students because they have never experienced working, not even part-time working. So some of the questions are quite difficult to imagine. So they can't really guess what's written.
Yes, well, let's not go down the route of why Japan seems to be obsessed with TOEIC when it's not actually being used in the way it perhaps should have been intended. Because high school students shouldn't be doing TOEIC. It's a
No.
business English test.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. mReader offers log. Oh. Right. Onyx reading, right? So if they answer questions for a physical book, that can be recorded on the X reading log. Am I correct? Yeah.
Yeah, we don't use any physical books with our X reading learners at the moment, but there is I know there's an mReader. They somehow integrate mReader quiz scores there as well, so I'm not sure. Maybe someone else can answer that, but I think yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can choose to use physical and
Digital.
online. What's the word? Thank you. And digital books, and use both of them. And the physical books use mReader quizzes, of course. So, yeah. And there's also a journal function in, I don't know if you've played around, there's a journal function in X reading where you can kind of have sort of a conversation with your teacher about that book. And students can put things in, and so I haven't used that function, but I know it's there. So so that's another option.
Yeah.
So till now, you don't have like in-class activities associated with extensive reading, but you're looking to maybe integrate that when you move over to X reading, or
Well, for X reading, because we can do a book club thing. Maybe we might have activities in the classroom, but I haven't decided yet because I haven't used X reading at all. So I'll find out how students deal with it.
Right.
You have a training class or something next week, do you? For how to use X reading, I assume.
Yeah.
A learning curve for you and your students, sure.
Great. Yep.
Now, are there any other questions for Noriko or for the general group?
Jordan, how about you?
Yes, lurking away there.
Me? No, well, we actually talked about this quite a bit, Noriko, your research. And it's interesting though, because I didn't know that they had approved X reading for high school. So I think last time we talked, when did you decide that they were gonna do X reading?
In fall, Paul came into our school for the English department teachers meeting, and he did a short presentation for us in person, all the way from Kyoto, Nara,
Right.
Osaka. And then suddenly the teachers kind of got interested, and it just worked. Strike the iron while it's hot.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. No, yeah, actually the question that I was going to ask was asked a while back, and that was just kind of how the students are taking to extensive reading, and like, are they motivated to read, or like how do they feel about it? And that's basically what my interest is, because that's what I kind of have to struggle with in my classes. So yeah, and that's what I'll probably talk about a little bit next month. So,
Very good preview. Thank you. Yes, if you want to join us next month, our featured speaker will be Jordan, talking about his trials and tribulations. So very good. Now, I think that's probably a good point to wrap up the recorded section of tonight's event. So thank you very much, Noriko. Very interesting. And yes, round of applause for our speaker.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.